It's Friday.
Oh, it was a genuine wall.
Usually a day here was good turnout. Yeah, I think they only sold out. If they didn't, they can.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So, well, with that.
Hey, leave your name so much there.
He reached out.
Did they? Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna give you a heads up. I forgot.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I'm
Okay.
gonna send him.
Is that-
We talked on the phone. Yeah, I'm gonna give him an email.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, appreciate it.
Good, yeah, he was, said, you know anybody? I said, yeah, I think so. Yeah, they want to do some training for their staff and stuff.
Yeah. I do a lot of that.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And that's me personally, that's not.
That's not just.
Yeah.
Where's your career?
Yeah. Yeah, I was up in, when I was in Spencer a couple weeks ago. I'll go all over that stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I tried to buy the package fire night or the fire truck with the kids. to school.
Yeah.
Then I'll give it away.
Yeah.
I didn't win. I didn't win that.
Yeah.
They have fuel stuff.
That is the attention.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, so they had a lot of stuff. We were gonna come pressure party, but then we decided. We'll bring them, you know.
We haven't gotten a little bit later. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I had Melissa.
Yeah, we used to. We were all like, we were well.
Hey, Jason, Sorry, Melissa and Jeff both on.
She good, Brian?
Jeff said he could hear us. Good. Let's keep him on mute.
I'm not sure those are so someone needs that.
Melissa, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I tried videoing, but you stopped me. Is that intentional?
Sorry, no.
I mean, you don't have to look at me. That's fine. I'm just trying to make sure.
All right, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. First of all, we're gonna open up a public hearing for the 2023-24 school calendar. Gail, do we have any public input on that?
Not received any written or oral comments about the calendar.
Anybody here want to address the school calendar for the 23-24 calendar year?
We did have, and I don't know if we want to do that later in the meeting, but we did have some comments that came in from a handful. If you want to hear that now, or you want to wait until later in the
I
agenda.
say go ahead and do it right now, I guess if you could.
Okay,
Yep.
Mr. Vanderpool, do you want to speak to that since he?
Absolutely. We sent the district calendar out with the frequently asked questions document to the district. Gave an opportunity for district patrons to respond with comments, and we received 14 comments total. Without going through each and every single comment, there's a handful that are in support of the calendar. There's a couple that would like finals at the high school move before Christmas. There's several that would like to be done with school before Memorial Day. There's two that do not like the current draft of the calendar due to the early out 2:30. And then there's a couple that would prefer a 1:30 or a half day versus a 2:30. And then there was a handful of supportive ones, so 14 total.
And again, that was sent district wide, all parents.
All parents and all staff.
Okay,
Along with a document that kind of explained how the calendar was created and answered a whole bunch of questions.
perfect. All right. Anything else? Public input on that hearing? With hearing none, I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn the public hearing for the 23-24 school calendar. I'm gonna go ahead and call to order our regular meeting. Gail, roll call, please.
Josh?
Here.
Tyler?
Here.
Jeff?
Yep.
Melissa?
Here,
Andrew?
Here,
All present?
do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda passed, and we are moving on to public forum. We have Andrew Preston here to speak tonight for public forum. And I did talk to you briefly before, Andrew, but just a reminder, it's limited to roughly 5 minutes. I'm not going to be strict on that at all. We are not able to address you during public forum, but you can say whatever you want to say during the forum. And we will listen, and then we will go on with our meeting. So the table is all yours. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna read this, so I
Perfect.
keep my thoughts in mind. I'm Andrew Preston with at 213 Rockmore Drive here in Gilbert. Is that all I need to say on that? All right.
Yep.
Okay. Friday, January 27th, our fourth grade son alerted us to a concerning incident that took place more than a month prior at the intermediate school. On December 16th, a student brought 2 machetes to school. Abby Halpert, the teacher, confiscated them and kept them behind her desk, at times unattended for the remainder of the day, then eventually returned them to the student and deliberately failed to follow any procedure set in place by choosing not to report this incident. We brought it to Amy Griffin's attention after confirming that this did in fact happen, she got the superintendent, Dr. T, involved. Through a very brief investigation, they came to a quick conclusion that there was no threat, which directly contradicts how the board views weapons on school premises as stated in your policy, which can be found in the board policy subcategory 502.6, dangerous weapons. Amy Griffin asked us on multiple occasions to not say anything about this to anyone. Dr. T then made the call to not inform parents of the students in the district or in the class. The child possessing weapons freely roamed the halls and came into contact with kids in multiple grades and multiple buildings while heading home at the end of the day. It's only by the grace of God that nothing happened. As parents, this greatly disturbed us that actual deadly weapons were on a school grounds, and the superintendent made the call not to notify parents, but also not to notify authorities. After being informed that Dr. T made this call, we initiated a meeting with her so we could try to understand why such a decision was made. During our conversation, Dr. T informed us that the teacher who deliberately tried to cover this up was in a disciplinary program and procedures were being followed. We were shocked to learn that there was even a procedure for when teachers fail to report weapons in possession of a weapon on school property. After voicing our concerns about the administration's choice to keep this story quiet to avoid giving parents an opportunity to hear the truth and being able to voice valid concerns, and I quote Amy Griffin, to keep it off of social media and out of the news, the next morning, Dr. T instructed Amy Griffin to send a vague, misleading email to the classroom parents only where the weapons were. We were disappointed in the partial truths this email contained. We felt the administration was still trying to keep a lid on this, so we decided a meeting with the board was appropriate. We knew a way to get on the agenda was to go through Dr. T at least 7 days out from the next meeting. Timing was of the essence, so we tried to make contact with Dr. T to do so, and initially never heard anything back until we directly made contact with the individual member of the board. As parents, we do not feel that transparency, honesty, and safety was of the utmost importance, but that the administrator's reputation was on the forefront of their agendas. We've spoken to multiple families and teachers within the district, and they are all alarmed and shocked that this is going on and agree that it is not and was not handled properly. This situation has been mishandled in many ways by many people on many levels, and we feel it needed to be addressed by the board to ensure it never happens again in such a great district as Gilbert. So we can continue to maintain a high standard of excellence and continue to do so honestly by not trying to contain anything that might affect the reputation of our school. If a fourth grader can do the right thing and tell the truth, even when it's hard, we fully believe that a superintendent and staff are capable as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for presenting tonight.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
It's hard to speak in public, so we appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks for hearing.
yep, thank you.
Moving on, announcements and celebrations.
Okay, that's me. Last week was National School Counselors Week, and we had a wonderful opportunity to celebrate our school counselors. There was a video that came out about every day celebrating them. And this was what I want to share tonight is the video that came out on Friday that had some of our kids talking about their favorite counselors. And so those of you sitting in the chairs, I apologize, you're gonna have to turn and look at the screen behind you. If you want to see those kids' faces, and we're going to share that with you this evening. Well, we asked some of our kids, what do they think of our school counselors? And their answers are pretty interesting. So check it out. Let's see about that.
Because I like my school counselor because she's nice. I like it because she always is like there. So if you ever need to talk about anything, she'll always be there and she'll like help you through it every single time.
I will probably make everybody feel like a somebody.
So I like that they're able to help us with our feelings if we're down or sad. But I also love that Miss Gordon's nails are always done and her side sorter is amazing. Because she's friendly and she's very encouraging. I like my school counselors because they're always there for you and they're always fun to be around. What I like about my counselors is they're really helpful whenever you need them. Like you can talk about their feelings and what's maybe going on. They also have really good exploratories. They're really fun and engaging. Yes, she's kind. I like them a lot, mostly because they're really nice. And they like when you're like sad or like or like you're mad or something, they can help you calm down a lot. I like my school counselors because they always work hard in their time.
What I really like about my counselors is that they're really nice and always there for you, and they're really fun to be around.
I like my school counselors a lot because they're really kind, and whenever you're like depressed or you're sad or something, you can just come to them and talk it out, and then afterwards you feel a lot better.
I like my school counselors because they help you feel better when you're sad or when you're lonely and you're new to the school.
I like how supportive they are and how like you can easily connect with them.
I think school counselors are really kind to teachers and students because they help them learn.
One of the most happiest things that the school counselors do for us that I like about them is that they always are there to help people feel better or help with emotions or conflicts.
Something I like about my school counselors is they're always there for you and they support you and more.
I think they just sit in the room, watch stuff on their computers and look through their phone on Facebook all day. They do some work, the exploratories and then they talk with the kids. I feel like a lot of it would be a lot of fun, kind of, because you don't know if you're going to have a kid you need to talk to, so it's like a lot of free time, maybe. The school has your work and choose them hang out with nice kids. I think they kind of just kind of wait around until some kid comes in, and then they just kind of talk it out and help them do like meetings with kids, maybe. I think Miss Gorman just does coffee, Starbucks, nails, sleep, repeat, some work in between. And Miss Thomas just sits around, drinks coffee.
School counselors like Mrs. Hazelhoff teach about growth mindsets and also fixed mindsets, and there's a book called Bubblegum Brain and Brick Brain, and that's about both.
I think what they do on it is they search out videos for their slides and make the slides and help kids feel better when they come in and wait for the morning for the kids that come in for their specials. They wake up definitely. I'm not gonna disagree that they don't drink coffee, but they also teach their exploratories and they always help students.
I think what the school counselors do all day is they help others come back together from when they're in conflicts and teach others about emotions. So I know what for she does all the specials she has a day, but then I think she has like meetings with different kids so they can tell them, and then you have a lunch, and then sometimes she'll have lunch for some days, and then she'll keep doing with the meetings.
I feel like they wake up, probably brush their teeth, then they go to school to set up the classes. And after they're done teaching us, they probably go to Starbucks and drink like 5 coffees a person. He teaches kids to be kind every day.
Well done.
So we just want to thank our counselors for all their work. I also want to thank Troy Banning for putting that together for us, as well as all the other videos that went out last week, highlighting our counselors and the work that they do. We're very, very fortunate to have counselors in all of our buildings and continuing to develop our mental health programs and practices and mental wellness with our students. So that is a huge celebration. I'm really thrilled that we were able to honor them last week and grateful to them for all the work that they do in our buildings to help our kids make good choices and good decisions in their future, as well as what happens on their day-to-day. So we want to thank our school counselors for that. So thank you. The second celebration that I have is I wanted to congratulate our first ever girls wrestling team that we had this year. We had 3 girls that went to state, that were state qualifiers, Fern Neubauer, Cece Bowers, and Alex Harswick. And it was a wonderful, it was just a wonderful event. It was great to see them online. I wasn't actually able to be there, but to watch them and cheer them on. I'm learning my wrestling cheers because I don't know those as well, but it was wonderful that Alex Harswick did, she was seated 10th and ended up finishing 4th. So a lot to celebrate there. History was made by Gilbert girls in the wrestling. So many other things that are happening around the district, but that's one I wanted to highlight.
And how many girls do we have go out again for wrestling?
It was approximately 20, 22, 21. Thanks. A little help from the side, thanks. So we had a really great team, and I know those just continue to improve year after year. So it's wonderful.
Perfect. Anything else for announcements, celebrations?
There are many, but we'll stop there first.
All right, moving along, admin reports, department updates. I think everyone saw the department updates in their board notes. Any comments for that from that, Dr. T?
No additional comments. Just know that as you read board reports, if you ever have a question, feel free to always reach out. You can reach out to me or to the director if you have additional questions related to those board reports.
I did have a question, Andrew.
Yeah.
In Deb's on the food service, she made a point about negative lunch balances and food insecurity, and just if either Dr. T or Gail kind of free and reduced lunch, or if there's kids that are not eligible for that but still have negative accounts. I mean, do we have scholarships or something set up, or how can we help with that?
So last year, and we'll be bringing this to the board again, last year we took advantage of the flexibility fund. And we allocated some money to help with the negative balances. So we'll probably bring that again in May, but we'll try to let the year go and let them try to pay what they can. And then at some point, we'll transfer, if the board wants to do that again. We'll look at our funds and the balances, and then that is something we can do again. But we are, there's no other help like in the past with, from the federal government. So if there's any assistance, the flexibility fund or local donations, if, any local, clubs, organizations, sometimes, we have Boy Scouts or some organizations like that that want to donate. We do have a charity fund. And how we do that at the end of the school year when school is done and everybody's gone, we look at the negative balances and we have a criteria. And we look at basically the free group, the reduced group, and then we spread the donations out equally. So that's how we manage that. So we'll address that in May for the flexibility. That sure helped last year, so.
And it is something we are always looking at, because some of it is the food insecurity piece that you have mentioned. And some of it has to do with the high school where they may be on the free and reduced lunch, but if they select an a la carte issue or menu item, then that's added. And that is not paid for through the free and reduced lunch. And that becomes a challenge. Once it goes onto a student's plate, obviously we wouldn't remove that. And so some of the balances that are running pretty high are tied to that a la carte. And so looking at how we can best offer that, free and reduced piece, but also limit the a la carte, and how to do that without, what that looks like is something we're constantly discussing.
And sometimes it's just make the child understand that in order for it to be a reimbursable meal, they have to have so many components. And so we try to encourage them to take all components so we could count that as a meal. And if they don't, then everything's an a la carte, which doesn't help them in their account.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the department updates report? All right, moving along, we've got the RSP enrollment forecast report. And I believe RSP is on the line.
They are.
I am on the line. Can you guys hear me?
We
Yes.
got you. Yep.
All right. Looks like I can't share my video, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
As she's doing that, just to remind everyone that we had a previous brief overview about what they were looking at. And they have gone back and reworked our numbers and have the updated numbers for us. So that's what you'll be hearing tonight in their enrollment projections for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes, thank you for that. So a little bit about the report, just expectations. So going to be a statistical analysis here. We're going to walk through that preliminary data that I kind of shared with you guys last board meeting of the different kind of components that go into the report. And then we'll dive in deeper of what to do with that data. What does that mean for your next 5 years and then 10 years out? And then how do we correlate that back to the student experience and the capacity of buildings? So I work with RSP. My name is Jenna Wallace. We're down here in Kansas City, so it's a pretty exciting Monday around the town, and we're all kind of blurry-eyed from the fireworks last night. They're just 3 hours south from you guys. We do a lot with school districts, so we only work with school districts, and we're kind of all over the Des Moines, Iowa area. So I'm familiar with the area, but this is our first analysis with your school district. We'll go through the report tonight. I won't spend too much on, say, slides that I presented last time, so I'll try to kind of stick to this new information and then especially our part 3 of our projection. So we'll go through past student data trends. What does this look like for community demographics, and then housing and development, and then our projections. We have some different icons throughout the report that help the readability. So if you're posting this out on the website and for people to read, we have different, if there's a star, it means it's a signature slide. So kind of most important variables leading into the projections. And then how our different indicators, some contribute to growth and some contribute to student loss. And we have to weigh those out in the projections. And then lastly, we have an appendix of even more information. If you're very, very interested in this report, there's always an appendix that has kind of more maps and visuals that we can get into as well. So our part one, 100,000 foot perspective here. So in between reports, you can kind of come back and be like, what did she say back in 2023? So that's kind of what this slide summarizes here. We have enrollment growth projected for the next decade for the district. In our first 5 years, where we have a more in tune statistical analysis, we have the district growing by around 220 students. And then our second 5 years, so the kind of 6 to 10 year outlook, we have an additional about 80 students projected to grow there to get near 2,000 students in the next 10 years. We correlate this with building capacities that was provided by the district, and we'll go through the development and how residential development is a main indicator and a main signal for future growth in the district. So first slide here, we do have a lot of maps throughout the presentation. So just kind of purple lines, district boundary, and we have our 2 cities highlighted here in the different colors. This next visual is our planning area. So this is the main methodology of the statistical model. I believe I kind of spoke on that last time, but just goes to show that if you follow a green line, that's going to be basically one puzzle piece that we put into the model. So our student data is references different subdivisions, apartment complexes, based off natural boundaries and district boundaries, to then go into each planning area contributes to the projections in a different way. We know that from what year your house was built or what type of housing product, you're likely to yield different amounts of students, and that's all factored into those projections. So next slide, this is just our forecasting model. So just going into the statistics and all the different variables that I'll go through tonight that lead into the accuracy and the methodology of the 5 and 10 year analysis. So first signature slide here is what we want to talk on a little bit of the demographics of the community and our live birth rates. So the table in front of you is Story County live births from the past, I think around 8 years. So if we're looking at what's the relationship of the number of live births in the county and the number of kindergartners enrolled in the system 5 years later. So this relationship kind of speaks to where we're projecting our kindergarten class for the next 5 years. We know that, kids move in when they're 3 years old or they're 4 years old. So it's not a, the catch-all of what the kindergarten will be, but it is an indicator to watch. So we have had live births slightly decreasing and definitely not growing in the county. And that's pretty consistent with what we're seeing on a lot in the area. But our percent of live births is pretty stable. So despite some small decreases in live births, we have an increasing kindergarten class. One number that we want to look at is, despite this decreasing live births, we were kind of targeting, if you guys keep on track of 110 kindergartners per year, that's going to be a good number to kind of baseline yourselves of how this projection keeps forecasting year to year. So continuing to enroll more than 100, around 110 kindergartners is going to look really good for how the projection accuracy comes out those 5 and 10 years later. So next slide, our past enrollment. So we're going to show all the way back to 2000 and 2001 of what is our past enrollment by grade. So we come down to the bottom row, that's going to be our 22-23 enrollment of getting up to 1,693 students with an increase of 54 students from last year. So if we look at the past 3 years, we have about 3 to 5% growth in the district, and how our different grade cohorts have increased throughout the time. It's a pretty good trend in your district as grade cohorts make their way through the system, they increase. So from a 5th to 6th grade is a pretty good jump in the district as you guys pick up more students. So even though there's less students, less kindergartners entering the system than seniors exiting the system, the cohort growth that is organically happening in the district is a good indicator of future growth and a future migration of students coming into the district. You can kind of see that better on this next visual here, where we're focusing in on cohort change. So as a class of kindergartners goes into 1st grade between the years, do they increase or do they decrease? And what's that relationship? The red numbers are where we would see student loss. So you can see from last year, we lost 15 kindergartners into first grade, but other than that, it was mostly positive with cohort growth. Our 5th to 6th grade is, if we're looking at our averages, the cohort that gains the most year to year. So different choices that parents make, they're coming in now for the middle school experience, boost this enrollment, and factors into how our secondary classes, our kind of 6th through 12th grade, is larger than our elementary grades. So next slide, we wanted to focus in on migration of students. So overall, how many are the new students coming into the district versus how many past students left the district year to year. So that's what we're looking at in this visual. The orange bars are going to be new students each year. So I went somewhere else last year, and then this year I transferred into the district from grades 1 to 2 or 1 to 12. And then out migration is that opposite. So I was a student in Gilbert last year, and then this year I've transferred out somewhere. So overwhelmingly, you can very, very easily see in this visual that you have a positive migration of students and continuing to draw in this kind of middle school and intermediate cohort increases is going to be a big indicator of that kind of middle grade configuration growth in the district, with the last 3 years of all net migration positives of above 50 students. So next visual, we wanted to focus in on open enrollment. So we know with Iowa legislator and this changing this year, this is going to be a little different than even maybe the numbers you have currently in the system right now. So this is going to be our open enrollment as of certified enrollment day and what we're looking at in the district. So 179 students open enrolling from out of the district boundary into the district this year. When we look at what are the top 4 districts that contribute open enrollment, very clearly Ames Community School District being the largest contributor to open enrollment pretty consistently the last 4 years. And we do want to, this is definitely going to be something that we want to kind of keep talking about and keep looking at with it changing with the different legislature of how open enrollment will factor into future projections. So a couple of student maps here. The visual here is where we're looking at from the past 5 years, where have we seen student counts increase and where have we seen student counts decrease. So orange is going to be where we saw increases. So we saw some increase within the city of Gilbert, and then our kind of portion of city of Ames down in the south, where these orange areas are where we saw student count increase the past 5 years, and green is going to be where we saw those decreases. And then the heat map. So if we take all of the student data that we have this year and put them on this heat density map, we see this relationship of right there in the city of Gilbert, and then right on our south part in the city of Ames being our hottest parts of student density there. So that kind of concludes our part 1 that gets into all types of enrollment indicators. So definitely cohort trends and how the different district has been growing the last 3 years is a main indicator of student growth. We definitely want to watch our Story County live births for that relationship for future years, and then continue to watch migration and open enrollment, how that will also contribute to future growth in the district as well. So part 2, we're going to get into development and growth. And a lot of these slides is what I presented last time, seeing as I didn't have that student data piece. So this first visual is a correlation graphic. So what is the relationship in your district between the green line, population? So we can see an increasing population within the district. The blue line is building activity. So how many new permits of occupancy in the district? So we're at a little increase from this year with 79 new units in 22-23. And then lastly, this red line that dipped a bit in 2019-20 is our student enrollment. So pandemic year and that kind of stuff, we saw this dip. But overall, we have a good relationship and a good correlation of these 3 indicators positively impacting one another. So if we continue to see population growth and housing growth, we're likely to see enrollment growth. So next analysis is we dive kind of even deeper into that of what is the relationship between residential inventory and student enrollment. In this case, so we have a yield rate. This gives you kind of a baseline of how many students you can forecast are going to be yielded from new residential inventory. So if we're looking at this top table, this is going to be our single family units. We have more single family units in the district and we have much more built. So we have a kind of a better supply of sample of this top analysis. So all these numbers are going to be in referencing of 100 students. So per 100 single family units, you see 58 students. And then we kind of piece that over of our different geographies. So in the rural area between the two cities is where you have the highest student yield rate. City of Ames is around 53 students per 100 single family homes. City of Gilbert is at 55 students per 100 single family homes. This is a really good tool if you're in between reports and you have the City of Ames come to you and be like, we just approved 200 new lots in this area. And you guys can go and be like, okay, if we use this analysis, we're looking at, around 100 students forecasted for that area. This kind of stuff to help you guys plan for in between those different questions. And then likewise with the multifamily, we have less inventory right now. But if in the future, if you guys we could just have a new apartment complex coming in with 100 multifamily units. Right now, we're just only forecasting around 3 students per 100 multifamily units. Any questions on kind of that slide? Because it is a lot of data, but I do think it's a really important tool for you guys to understand.
Is there any data on if those numbers go deeper than 5 years? Just because I understand it's a floating number because, those houses might have young children or older children in them, but does that data change at all for example, a 10-year cycle since it is K-12?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of getting into what we call regreening. So neighborhoods turn over and how they yield student rates. So I think we can only go back to as much of the student data we have geocoded. So we could go back a couple more years for the yield rate, but we do see this kind of change over time where in certain areas it'll dip and then increase as people move out of that residential inventory and then come back in with new families. It's going to be most influential for new inventory though, of this is how many new units are coming online and then what can you expect based on the other relationship the students currently have with the residential inventory. Okay, so then a couple visuals that I think I shared with you guys last time. So average year built, median home value, and then our latest year built, just kind of going into how deep the analysis goes with our residential inventory of how we're pulling out that parcel data with the student data to see this relationship. This dot map here shows into the last 5 years of new units in the district. So our new subdivisions coming online with 2022 building 79 new units, I guess last year now, but we are going to kind of keep watching on what the 2023 has for new residential inventory as well. This visual here that goes kind of over time where we saw residential growth happen. So from 1990 to 2010, we built the most of our units in the district. So that's going to be the most average kind of housing inventory that new people can move into the district and buy there. And then we also talk to the cities and we talk to city planners and kind of put together this visual of where we think future development will happen. So green areas are going to be that current, yellow 5-year, purple 10-year, going into this analysis of expecting around 4,300 potential units in the district the next 10 years. So that's what I'm saying with the yield rate of new things coming online, utilizing the yield rate in our potential units to piece together how these projections come together. So that concludes kind of the development and housing part of this analysis and how that contributes to our projection. So we have very positive indicators of growth But just know that development activity is a pretty fickle thing. So we have different things happening outside of our control with interest rates and supply chain challenges that is limiting factors for development. So we always want to make sure you guys know to keep watching this, keep our kind of ears to the different infrastructure things of the timing pieces of development, that some may stall, some may speed up, and it's the best information we have at this time. So with that, I'll pivot into our projection looks. Our first visual here goes into where we have been, our past enrollment, and then where we are projecting you guys to go. So our table here is built with red being our elementary enrollment. And then we've combined for this visual our intermediate and middle school into the blue for just middle school 6 to 8. And then our high school is 9 to 12 with the aggregate at the top in the purple line. So we have our kind of first 5 years and second 5-year outlook that will lead into those 10-year projections. Our first 5 years, we have a more drastic look on what the growth is with an district-wide growth of increasing by 220 students district-wide, with the majority of that growth at the elementary level. So we have forecasted from 750 students this year, going up to around 868 elementary students, 433 middle school students, and 614 high school students. So that we kind of piece together that increase. Middle school is more stable as some of the smaller elementary classes are coming into the middle school level, while the larger middle school grades right now are going into the high school. And then we have forecasted that elementary with those indicators that we've talked about, positive migration and the development activity, that we think your elementary grades are going to continue to grow and increase more past that 110 mark moving forward. Our second 5 years, so our 6 to 10 years, a bit more of a limiting growth model here. So we have, kind of those indicators that we're going to try to track year to year and see if this increases more or if a more stable growth happens past that mark of increasing of about 80 students to get near that 2,000 total student enrollment by 2032-33. In this case, elementary is pretty stable, kind of around 860 to 870 students in those next years. Middle school increases to over 500 students as we see what we have forecasted, the larger elementary grades coming into the middle school in this time period. You see more of the growth rather than in the first 5 years, you see their growth in the second 5 years. And then high school, a pretty moderate growth model there of around kind of 615 to 630 high school students. So that's kind of our overall view of projections, and we can dig deeper into it. But did I hear a question?
Yeah, it's kind of a dig deeper thing, I guess. So the middle school numbers, in theory, unless you have that data, could I split that 3 ways and know roughly what the 6th grade would be? I mean,
so we've got a couple more slides that will go into more detail of by building and by grade level projections. So this next slide is more if you're reading it, just to kind of go into detail of this next slide, that we have different things built into this visual here. So we pulled for our first 5 years, so that 23-24 to 27-28 enrollment by building, so we can dig in deeper of the intermediate and the middle school, and then in reference to building capacity. So this was provided by the district. I think in your latest work with the architect, you guys solidified these numbers here that we're referencing for our first 5-year look. The next thing we put together with this visual is we wanted to focus in on open enrollment. So your top number here is going to be purple for our out of district. So how many students are we projecting to open enroll each year by grade level? And then in district is going to be that reside, how many we project altogether, and then add those together, you're going to get your total attend. We did this to give you guys some more tools to understand where the increase is coming from. If open enrollment policy changes and this number decreases or increases by a lot, it will help you guys piece together maybe how the projection totals are figuring out a little differently. And just kind of to show that open enrollment is a pretty good trend with your community and increases at the grade levels as you go on. So kind of piece together how you get to these different capacity challenges and how that references to open enrollment. So we can see at these different levels here, our first building that goes over building capacity is going to be at the high school with our 9th to 12th of 614 students. With our middle school, around 430 students and peaking in 26, 27. And then at the intermediate level, we're getting up to right around 400 students. At the elementary level, around 472 students. If you're more of a visual person, we put together some different bar charts that lead into capacity being the red line and how we're seeing this district growth. So like I was saying in the beginning, where most of our first 5-year projection is in the elementary level and the secondary level or in the high school level. If we go farther out to a 10-year look, this is where we see some more capacity challenges with our forecasted growth. So at the elementary, we kind of come up and peak. And then the middle school, so this is our 6 through 8. So this is going to be, if we're looking at where 6th grade goes, pulling this down or such things like that's going to change what this capacity looks like. But then in our 9th grade with our high school capacity of getting up above that by 27, 28, and so on for the 32, 33 school year. I'm going to go back to this slide so we can kind of talk through this a little bit more because your question's about 6th grade. Did I answer, I'm sorry, did I answer your original question or do you have other notes on that thought?
No, breaking it down a little bit helps. I think just because one of the discussions is, what to do with 6th grade. So knowing the number of 6th grade students that we'd be messing around with, pushing, in one direction or another would be nice to know specifically. But it looks like, I think that's more of a conversation with, building people.
And Dr. Trujillo and we have talked about this thought. And so we are kind of putting together a by grade projection model for you guys to pull out 6th grade. The model isn't as easy as just extracting one grade because it's built in to a grade configuration model. So we are working on that to see what we have projected from 6th grade.
Because we have some weird stuff with our 6th grade too, because of other schools as well.
Exactly, yeah. So if we're looking at almost like a minimum number, we are looking at like kind of around 110 to 115 6th graders those 5 years. And so if we're looking at that with the different capacities of your buildings, it's almost kind of shifting the different challenges. So I don't know if Dr. Trujillo, if you wanted to talk to that at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so one of the conversations we've had over the last couple of weeks is just talking about that 6th grade piece and what does that look like. And so we're still working on that, as she was sharing that it's because of the different pieces they're looking at to say if the proposal came forward to 6th grade moving into the intermediate, what does that look like as it relates to what we're doing architecturally to make sure that this space is accommodating not only now, but also for the future. And so then the piece is, does that also allow for us to continue to grow in the middle school, which we're seeing here as they talk about that. So Jenna is continuing to work on that with her team, and she started off with some data with us about that. But looking at that capacity of 450, we would be over. However, we know that we're building, one of the proposals from the architects is to build additional classrooms. So it would put us under that capacity for future growth. So, and I know they're working on more wonderful charts. They're so good at that, to share that with you, but that is a conversation we had in the last couple of weeks.
Just a question, Gina, on as you look at our matrix of what we try to target for students per teacher ratio or students per section. Have you looked at then how many sections you break this down by number of sections? So should we be at 7 sections for each grade level, for example, in our 10-year look, or have you looked at it in that way?
I have not looked at it that way of the number of students per section. We could provide that analysis for you guys. Do you guys have a minimum, maximum class size that you guys are targeting for your sections?
It is on one of the slides in the
Yeah, it's a slide right here.
which number is it?
Projection notes and clarification.
30, page 30.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
If you look at page 30, yeah, you'll see that where at the very bottom, capacity of the building. So that's the number, going back to Tyler's point about sections of looking at the classrooms and the average number of students. That's what we're referring to there. But I think having it broken out by sections would just help, is what you're saying.
I mean, as we then transition into building, right? Well,
Yeah.
should we be targeting 7 or 6 or 8?
Our open enrollment matrix is a really good view of
Yeah.
all of that info.
Right. I think that'd be helpful for the grades that pertains, probably doesn't pertain so much to high school, but.
Yeah, for sure. I will definitely follow up on that and see what we could put together on that question.
And we've discussed this, but you know how challenging that could be in the middle school and the high school because of the scheduling around that. But there are some in middle school, it's a little bit easier. There are some core classes, a little bit easier than the high school to help with that. But it can shift a little bit, and then the high school, it shifts quite a bit. But at least it gives us, this is how many classroom spaces we need to make sure we're accommodating, whether it's in this plan or whether it's in a grade configuration change to make sure that we've accommodated for those classroom spaces.
Sure. Any other questions I can help you guys with?
Yeah. Hey, Gina, Jeff Holzman here. I'm on Zoom just like you are. What do you guys, how do you come to the conclusion that at year 2033, it just stops, or right in those last 2 or 3 years that we just quit growing? I mean, what assumptions are you making when you get that far out? I guess I don't question your numbers as much as the process in which you use to get those numbers. I just like to understand it more.
So it's more of, we are forecasting stable growth. So we think the enrollment growth that we're seeing here is going to be sustained in the district. But when we get out to these kind of year 9, year 10 is what we're looking for, is those future indicators of long-term growth. So if I go back to this visual here of where do we think after, say, all the green areas are developed and those student impact is felt in the district, what's our likelihood of the next kind of phase of development happening? And that's where we're putting in more of a limiting model, because we do have these areas with some infrastructure challenges. So having the city of Gilbert expand sewer down south and over to these kind of floodplain areas is going to be something that once that happens, we could see the 10-year forecast increasing by more. But at this point, we have some of those limiting. So we have more of that stable growth from the 6 to 10 years out until more interest comes into these different kind of 10 and 5-year development looks. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps a little bit. I guess I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's okay. I just wanted to understand the process.
For sure.
Without backing up the truck too much, can you go to slide 10?
Yeah. Hang with me if I give you guys some. There we go.
So you've got 4 years of percent of kindergarten of live births for the county. And in those 4 years, we go from 11 to almost 13. do you have any? Have you calculated that prior to 2014, or I'm just curious, kind of to Jeff's question about some of the assumptions. Are we assuming that we're getting a higher percentage of the kids in the county in this model? Because it grows 2% just in those 4 years.
Yeah, so this is kind of one of those indicators that if we're just looking at this one, we have a very different story of kindergarten class than when we add in all the different indicators of new housing development and migration trends. So for as far as geocoded student data, we were only able to get back to 2019-20. So for the student data before that, we weren't able to pull that relationship of Story County live births and kindergartners in the system. So a bit of a limiting factor there. But if we're looking at just this relationship here, the growth of 2% increase from the past 4 years is a definitely good outlook of just contributing to kind of past more enrollment growth than what we're seeing than just the live birth data.
I mean, at 2%, that's almost a section in itself, right?
Yep.
What's that?
Those kindergarten numbers all include K-prep,
Okay.
so that is. Which would be those 4 years we would have.
But the percentage is going up, right, of live birth?
The
Right.
percent working.
Yeah.
So like.
But you're saying that's also includes.
That's not saying 5 sections of kids, so. I think like, for example, in 2016, we said we had 117, we had 2 sections of K-prep along with the 5 sections. So I think when you look at that number and it looks like kindergarten goes down, or the kindergarten to first grade transition looks like we lose 15 kids every year. We don't, those are the kids who just go back to kindergarten and are coded as kindergartners again.
So that second to last column is both.
Because when did K-prep start?
The most recent iteration, the last 4 years, that those 4 last years that we have to.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Questions?
I think Gina, from just, if we have other questions that come up, I can reach out to you, and then also maybe you and I could work a little bit more on those sections, the question around that, as well as the 6th grade component as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gina, great job. Thank you so much for the work.
Yeah, thank you, Gina.
Yep. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Also, if I may.
I mean, you go right ahead.
Also, I believe it's in the Dropbox, the comparison from the other consultant that worked with us from the.
Just the report, just the report, you have the comparison.
Okay. So the report's in there from previous, so just so we're aware, as you also, I want to remind everyone that it is much different than what we had before, where that report was showing us declining in enrollment, and the gap is small in the beginning, but it just continues to get larger of the differences between what ISPIS was saying and what this RSP was saying. So just so you're aware of that piece. So
The trends of the younger growing first and then the older growing later, though, are the same. That's encouraging. At least there's general trends
trends,
in the
correct.
right direction.
And Christine, hey, Jeff here. Can you remind me again who they are already? Who else uses this group that we used tonight?
I know when I first started talking to this group, I was told that they are working with Norwalk. Norwalk used them like every 3 years, but then because of their growth there, they started using them every year. I know that they also are utilizing other districts near here around us. I don't remember.
Slide 3 says Ames, Bondurant.
Oh, that's right. So Ames
Okay.
just utilized them last spring. And so it was nice for them to be able to then take that information and help build that into our plan as well. But That was the most recent one that I had talked to was Ames. So thank you, Tyler, for that. It was Ames that had utilized them previously.
Anything else on the enrollment forecast? I guess I had Gail include IFSIS in there just so we ever have comparison, down the road, we can find both documents. I don't want to, on behalf of the board, but I'll speak on behalf of myself to say, I mean, obviously, RSP is much more of a forecast in my mind that we should be using going forward, since we have two documents, but I also just wanted to throw that out there to the board to say, do you all believe RSP is the document we should use to discuss enrollment for the next 5 to 10 years?
Yes.
I think they're the most accurate.
Jeff, Melissa, thoughts on that quick?
I'm on board with that.
Yeah, me as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have that out there, that since we have two documents now out in the public, that we kind of mostly, we're going to focus going forward on that RSP document more so than the IFSIS document. So, and again, that tells us we've got 220 kids coming roughly in 5 years and 300 total kids coming in a 10-year total, so. All right, moving along. Superintendent Trujillo is to attend the national conference in San Antonio.
Hey, Andy.
Yeah.
Andy, I got cut off there. Sorry about that.
No.
My thing caught. What worries me about this whole synopsis on this analysis is it says we go dormant in 33 or 32, and we really moving forward and spending today and spending in 5 years and spending in 10 years. You know, we that worries me. I'm just going to be honest with you. That part worries me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we see that out there. I guess we don't know 10 years out. And we also don't know this voucher system that was just passed by the state, but what that's going to affect in 10 years either. So I think we probably have a pretty good idea in 5 years where we're going to be, but 10 years is a guess.
Yep, I would agree. Thank you.
Yep.
If I may, RSP also, when we were talking about this early on, they don't like to project beyond 10 years because they feel like they no longer have any accuracy beyond 10 years because there's so many unknown factors. So that is something they had shared with me previously. So just, that it gets more and more difficult to be as accurate as possible the further out you go.
Yeah, I don't see this being the last time we have this report done.
Correct. I agree.
All right. Back to the national conference, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'm very excited to share with all of you that I will be attending the Superintendent Association National Meeting in San Antonio. Many superintendents from this area, as well as across the country, go to hear the latest and greatest in education. And I'll be bringing that information back to the district. It's a wonderful event. It runs Thursday through Saturday. I will be headed there on Wednesday, and it's a great opportunity to hear about the cutting edge pieces that are out there in education and what we're doing to support that and what other things we can do. So that's coming up and I'm really looking forward to it.
Did you attend this last year as well?
I attempted, but COVID got in the way a little bit, so I was not able to go. So this year it's in San Antonio, and good news, I'm in good health. I'm headed out, so.
Thanks for the update on that. Board reports, policy committee update. I believe you guys met. Josh, is that correct? This week or last week?
Last week,
Yeah. Any update on that meeting?
reading lots of policies.
Melissa, you love policy committee?
It's a good time.
I brought them just in case anyone wanted to.
Yeah. No, that's good. And again, we have no policy updates on our agenda for tonight, so we can't wait for the next policy updates to come through. I know it's not a board report, but I will mention that Dr. Trujillo and I met with the city last week to discuss our water bill. We also discussed some transportation or traffic issues as well. Nothing really to report just yet, but I believe by next meeting, we should have something back to report on that. So we kind of both had some takeaways from the meeting, both sides. So we're kind of waiting for more information, but we did meet with the city. Can't remember what day it was. It was last week, last Friday. So it was a good meeting.
It's good.
Facilities report, CMBA. We're ready. Yes, I do.
Come on down.
We're just gonna zoom into your call and share our screen. Okay. But then you'll see it.
Yep.
I'm doing that, which is really fun watching my back.
Yeah, maybe it's not.
Perfect. Well, thank you, guys.
All right, we're ready.
So hearing the numbers and what is going to happen, we have been meeting with each of the principals of each building and then with leadership as well to talk through where we need to go from here. And after gathering all of that information and putting together some options, we are now at a point to kind of go through some of those plans. And I know you guys have seen some of these and we can walk through them today with kind of overall questions, but we'll start big picture campus wide, then we'll go down into each building. And then at the end, we have a kind of a compilation list of costs and projections that we see for each of those pieces. After that, then we can also look at how to potentially prioritize those needs based on each of the buildings, because we also looked not only now and what the needs are, but how we can respond to those growth projections moving into the future so that we're not needing to be reactive later, but proactive now so that that planning can be put in place. So to look overall at the district, I know these are tiny little buildings across the city. Being able to dig down into each of the buildings, we will do that as far as the primary, intermediate, middle school, and the high school. But the big piece to look at on this is that we are looking at potentially 2 different locations for what we're calling the command center, which would be district office, receiving, transportation hub, and being able to kind of look at the northernmost area of the map all the way to the southernmost area of the map to kind of encompass your main north-south road and have those transportation hub points on either end. So if we look on the northern half of the intermediate site, there are 2 blocks there that indicate where that could be housed. Or if you go south of the high school and down past the agricultural farm area, then we would potentially look at having something on the corner of that lot as well for this. So that piece will come in at the end that we have cost assigned to it, but we wanted on this kind of overall image to show where we were looking at potentially bookending either of those locations that could be viable on land you already own. So we're going to jump into the primary. There we go. All right, so as we dig into this building, we're looking at potentially doing a large addition and heavy renovation to the existing building in order to accommodate up to the 7 sections of kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade, and then potentially expand on that pre-K area as well, so that we can have the ability to do morning and afternoon preschool options and to be able to have up to 6 sections in that space as well. And then in turn, looking at how the rest of the interior of the building is going to handle that capacity. So how the cafeteria and your multi-purpose space could house students during lunch, what we would need to do to accommodate kitchen growth in order to maintain that capacity at this building, and then how we could look at arranging each of those neighborhoods for kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade in order to create that learning environment that is working so well for elementary and early education learners. And then also being able to round out the space to support other activities that they're doing as well, because as part of the understanding of the projections, RSP was looking at using some of those classrooms right now that are dedicated to specials, like some of the space we're looking at right now. We've known that some of the areas have been taken over for other programs. So we need to also maintain music, art, guidance, STEM lab, and other spaces that we would want to still be able to have in this building and be able to dedicate space to. So the additional space would help accommodate and offset those spaces as well. That was a good echo.
One of the other challenges with this building is that it's not a true secured entrance and that you don't enter through a vestibule and then into an admin suite and into the building. And at the north end of your building, you're pretty landlocked with the bus drive. So with having a cafeteria that sounds like it gets pushed to the limits pretty often, and then a gymnasium that's really not appropriately sized for the kind of growth that we're looking at, it made sense to try to use the addition to create a new admin entry on the south of the existing parking lot and a larger gymnasium. And then that allows a little bit of flexibility with the old gymnasium to maybe grow into additional cafeteria space, so you don't have to have so many different periods.
So the main entrance would be where you got that admin entry, and it would no longer be on the north side then, you're saying,
Yes.
Joe?
Right, yes. And a lot of the admin spaces, it sounds like some of these are not functioning optimally. Some of the spaces are undersized, and I think that there's a lack of program in there. So by moving that admin space, that could be repurposed and renovated for more teacher spaces.
And there's no additional parking with this, is that correct?
At this point, we're looking at buildings and
Okay.
we can look at grounds
fine.
as well. We know that there's probably some queuing things that we're gonna want to consider as far as parent pickup and drop off and where that can happen in this space. With moving that entry, we do give ourselves a little bit more opportunity for some queuing instead of trying to overlap that with the bus pickup at the front or what is the front currently.
Yeah, get the kids away from the buses. It makes me nervous every pickup and drop off.
Yeah.
Yep, and the buses still on this one, as we're showing, could still have exit and pickup at that northernmost area, and then parental, we could look at creating that loop at the kind of proposed entry.
So I know it's not necessarily what we're talking about now, but it is at least for me, it's a priority to at least talk about in the future, and I'm afraid if we don't talk about it now, it'll never get done, but let's hypothetically say we offered childcare for the AM preschool class in the PM. Does this building cannot be done in that?
We couldn't meet, we wouldn't be able to, because basically your capacity would be 16 kiddos in a classroom all day.
Mhm.
So that instead of right now, the way we have it is for 32 kiddos, 16 in the morning, 16 in the afternoon. So that would basically only serve 3 sections of preschool as opposed to 6.
Yeah. Cause I think it's something we should be looking at since we're spending major amounts of money on a building, but that's just, again, that's a consideration I think we should be taking. But also priority wise, it would be lower on the list than all the things that we've done now. Not to say it isn't a priority, and that'd be, I don't think every child would be using it, but.
And when you say childcare, school age, like before,
Yeah,
after
just
school?
school, yeah,
and-
just it's very similar to what YSS is doing now, but I know like at the intermediate, they've got a section of the building that's just for YSS. Or at least, rooms that they can use. But we don't have it here where I'll say personally, it's harder to find childcare the younger they get.
The only piece I would add to that, though, is we look at the numbers related to that's speaking to if every section is full. I mean, we may not be in that spot right away, so it could fluctuate, but we'll have to, look at that.
So to that point, it looks like this would suggest 7 sections for kindergarten, first and second.
That's what we plan for this addition renovation to give you growth potential. We see a lot of districts that if they're seeing that bubble happening, to be able to plan for that, and then we can plan flexible space, whether that's more hands-on wet lab environment that can then transition to a classroom when you need it, or that can shift and be multi-purpose spaces when you need them, and then classroom spaces. when
And
the
of
capacity
those, if I'm looking at this right, 4 of the kindergarten and all of the first grade would be new.
is.
is that-
Yes,
Yes.
or
And
any.
everything else would be remodeled or
Renovation.
renovated, right?
Yep, and what we put in, because we highlighted kind of those specials in those larger areas, we did have in a large portion of the primary building to be renovated.
Right.
So even though it might not all be highlighted, we had up to 49,000 square feet, which is what your building is to have renovation.
11 new rooms and 13 renovated.
11 classrooms,
Yeah,
yes.
just
Yep,
sorry.
just classrooms, yep. And then you can see where the connector happens. We have a lot of opportunity for some growth of other spaces if we need officing space, guidance space, one-on-one breakout spaces. It's not all identified, but there's square footage in there to allow for it as the plans could be developed.
It's also difficult to put a number on the classrooms because some of the way that these are configured right now with the operable walls, we see it as you pretty much have to clean slate those and then try to reorganize, and that's getting a little bit down the road, but we just basically put a whole number for renovation for the building.
And the white space in the new area, that's to what you were just describing.
Yep,
Courtney.
exactly. When we went through and planned for this, we did a full program as if we were doing a 7-section school. And then from there backed out the spaces that you currently had that still function well. And then included that overall square footage though in what would be total under this roof. So roughly this square foot addition that we had down was about 28,000 square feet based on programming that either you're not able to have now or that you've displaced based on classroom demand. You want my backup numbers? I got it in a
So
spreadsheet.
I just quick math. I mean, if we average 25 per class, again, that's a roughly 600 kids this would hold. I mean, just if you're.
And at this level, we did do the reduced numbers though,
Yeah, I
because
agree.
25 is not ideal at this
Totally
age.
Totally agree. I just throwing
Yep.
that out there.
Easier math.
So with all that said, I mean, I'm just asking, I mean, are we hitting capacity with this building? I'm just even looking farther beyond 10 years. I mean, what else could we do? Is there any room for anything else? Are we pretty much if we were to do this, this is pretty much max for this building?
For your additional services that you're going to support?
Or if we want to do additions to this building or future growth around this.
I think you would
site.
want to consider other spaces as well then.
Yeah.
We're already looking at potentially that kitchen, cafeteria and multi-purpose room becoming more of that food service area that could be that cafeteria. It can handle that. It just depends how many lunch periods you're willing to take on too.
That's kind of what I thought. I would just.
And I think ideally we wanted to keep buildings at a certain size
Right.
so that we
And I
weren't
think,
gonna.
to your point, Andrew, if we were going to, I think that's, if we're talking 20 years down the road,
That's a
and we
lot.
have
We got a second.
then another site is
Yep.
probably what you're looking at.
Nope.
20 years.
Yeah,
And there are larger elementary schools, but
Sure.
based on kind of where we had the discussions of what
Yeah.
the comfort level was on the size of an overall building, that 600 mark is kind of where we wanted to
Yep.
stay.
I mean, I think as we go through this, start getting some stakes in the sand, I'll call it, which is one of them is, are we targeting 7 sections as our target? And if so, that would make sense to flow through at least up into middle school, right?
Right.
So, and I guess that is the question, Andrew. Well, is that it, or do you build it so you can expand? But at some point, we've got to pick a number and.
Yep.
If we have that crystal ball though, with more than 20 years, I would like that.
Because we're at 5 now, 6 now, sections. 5 sections.
5.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like that would certainly accomplish everything we just heard on.
Yep.
Enrollment projections.
For how long, Tyler?
The enrollment projections out 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And in fact, well, it exceeds that, but
Mhm.
who knows for how long?
Right, okay.
Any other questions on the elementary or primary?
Is this looking at like, are playgrounds moving at all, or are we just not discussing that at this time, or what does that look like?
We did not relocate any of the playgrounds. We did all of the building to the west so that we could accommodate and still leave that in place. What we started looking at is how we could displace the least amount of students. So being able to look at additions and spaces that could still leave their day-to-day life as is, and then be able to potentially transition when they move over to be able to take care of some of the additional renovations. So playgrounds were going to remain where they were.
At one time too, we saw some outdoor learning space. Is that still, I don't see it in here, but is that
It's
still?
not labeled, but
But-
between those classroom wings would give you an ideal space that's
Yep.
protected on that south side and give all of those classrooms
Access to
active
it?
space to that exterior. And again, don't judge us on the layout right now. We're getting your sections in, but I would anticipate each of those having
Yeah,
the opportunity to have that outdoor space. And again, we wanted to make sure that we were maintaining natural light to classrooms and creating those environments that make the most sense for that age of student in those neighborhoods.
Talked about fencing or security for the playgrounds at all? Cause it's gonna be a big enough fence that it'll be a scary number. Like, I think we'd
it's
be
needed?
surprised by it. I didn't see in the vulnerability report, I think that was part of it, but
It did
and
come
we've got a
in.
public walk space that goes
Yes.
through our
Yes.
playground, basically.
It is a recommendation, not the highest priority, but it was a recommendation related to the vulnerability study. So it is something that we will continue to discuss to bring forward, and yeah, there would be questions about where does it go as it relates to the walking space.
And is that just adjacent to the walk or whole circumference of the whole facility you're thinking, Josh?
I think that could be figured out. At least, along the
Where there's,
east side
yeah.
there. There's a lot of access there.
So
To-
Josh, to your point, we did 160 feet of 8-foot black fence at the middle school and it's 14,000.
Yeah, I think it'll be a scary number to come up with, I think, something that works, and that's why it'd probably be good to see an idea of that sooner rather than later.
Another recommendation was to start with the playground area, and the original assessment was done. Just mention based on what you said is access to that walking path. But it doesn't have to stop at that, obviously.
Yeah.
So the current, I mean, if you go to your summary slide, then what you've got there for elementary estimate, 17 million.
Yes.
and I know we talked about this real quick, just as so we can throw it out there. When we discussed a new building, what was that number on a new building, similar square footage? Was it 25?
Six.
Just sorry, I was,
Yeah.
somewhere on that 26.
25, 26,
Okay,
25, 840.
Exactly.
And what we looked at for that too as well was where we started that program of what would all be included in a 7-section new primary building in order to come up with that square footage. Which was comparable to where we are with addition and renovation work.
Is Stacy happy with this?
I don't know, Stacy.
Yeah, I mean, I think with, working within the parameters that we were working, I think it's great. And I think they took a lot of feedback that we had about what we'd like to see, and I like the layout.
Good use of the old space.
All right, let's move along to intermediate.
All right. Intermediate plan. So in talking with our groups when we met and then following up, we did consider how we can alleviate some of the stress from the middle school. So this opportunity, we were looking at being able to save the existing intermediate building and renovate the classroom wings in order to be able to create 5th and 6th grade wing, and then be able to look at an addition. And you guys can flip this to if you want to. It doesn't have to be this direction either. It could be an addition for 5th and 6th or an addition for 3rd and 4th. But looking at doing an addition to be able to take on those 7 sections. Don't count, I have a graphical error, but there are 7 sections for 5th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th that are allotted in the square footage in order to be able to create those wings to keep those age group of students together, but yet radiate around the center of your building where all of your extracurriculars and specials are found, your gym, your common space. to be able to have both of them activate that center core area, but create those learning environments for them in their age appropriate wings. We did look at how we could rework some of the transportation and parking areas to be able to make best access of this site, as well as still potentially maintain that eastern end of the building, but shift maybe some of that music up to the center part so that it's easily accessible around the entire building, and it is all ADA friendly and meets those needs, so that in the short term, you still have gym space that's appropriate, but we're able to centralize all of those specials to be able to make them accommodate everyone. This is then where you can also see on this site that we would look at relocating the football field and the track in order to gain some of that northern exposure for that addition, as well as potentially playground space and that transportation hub and district office receiving area to be able to give back some of that space to the intermediate school currently, and be able to rework some of their spaces internally as well.
Yeah, and in the parking on the west side, that large portion of parking that's up north, that would be an additional amount of parking that would be added for the building addition, and also the bus turnaround that you can see. Just trying to provide some area for that. And then as far as trying to alleviate some of the traffic that seems to get backed up to the roundabout, this drive-through, previously we had shown a road that would drive through and separate spaces. That didn't get great feedback, and so what we tried to do here was just enlarge that amount of drive so there can be enough cars or more cars off the street that can be parking waiting. Don't get hung up on the parking lots because we work with civil engineers for that. And then having a separate drive to the transport hub, like 47th district office up north, a separate building.
One of the topics that was discussed during a meeting with the city is that Second Street going all the way across on the north end of our property and then connecting with whatever that road is that goes north-south. So there was again, it wasn't, we was just discussed, there's more information to come, but it definitely could be an option to put a road on that north side all the way across.
And with what we're showing the playground, so the dark green on the north portion of this, that is intended play area for the third and fourth wing. And then the play area down south of the new roundabout, that's intended for fifth and sixth. So really don't want them to cross any traffic, and separating them seems to be an ideal.
Also, this reflects previous conversations of keeping the gym. And so you can see those additional classrooms that are off to the edge of there. There's some pieces in there that would all remain, but the classrooms would be more in the corridor. Those would be the kids club and spaces available like that, that are available in that way, but they wouldn't be designated classroom space.
Right.
Could we secure that area so it's separated from the school? It's not, okay.
We talked about that too.
Yeah.
So
What, Jeff?
What area is that, you guys? Somebody point to it on the screen.
the old gym, Jeff.
The old
Oh,
gym.
okay, all right.
So being able to kind of stop it at this point right here, and then have this area available for others to use.
And what we discussed is there's restroom access there as well. So that could be shut off for safety, and then families could come through the gym, to the restroom area. So they'd still have access for that.
So we're not knocking down any gyms in this scenario, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I really like this a lot. I was never a big fan of moving the football field or the track, but I think you guys did a great job here.
Keep going, Jeff.
I like it too. Questions would be repurposing to the east of the gym. So that's currently music. I mean, that's a lot of space.
It's a lot.
It is a lot of
Right?
space.
And is there something that could be repurposed in there?
Right.
And I'm not saying that music, I like that music, if that ends up going over to the southwest corner. But the question would be repurposing that. And then I guess if we're jumping to the transport hub and the district office, I guess the best way that would fit would be if that second street goes in. If it doesn't, I would think that would be a struggle to put even more traffic right there, because that's
Yeah.
the limitation, right? So that would almost be if there was a way with the city to get Second Street to be put in, that maybe becomes feasible. If not, I don't know that it's
I agree, Tyler.
feasible.
I think the only way it would work is if we had Second Street.
Yeah, but is a transport hub just an office for the transportation director, or are we gonna bus there?
So what this is intended to show is bus parking and also a building where they could house at least some of the fleet. But maybe some of that would still be outside, but the area needs to be able to accommodate your entire fleet.
Yeah, then I'm gonna take back what I said. This is a terrible drawing.
Because
You gotta get the buses out of there. You just gotta get the buses out of there.
and with that additional parking that's represented to the north there, Jeff, I mean, that's currently where the buses are at, so.
Right.
That-
We just, we just gotta get the buses out of there. We have plenty of land down south with nothing on it. And I think we're remiss if we don't take advantage of that. You just gotta get them out of there. And I get that it moves the floor farther south on a 2-lane road, but they're all 2 lanes, So, yeah. My thoughts anyway. There you go. But short of the hub, I love everything else.
Any other discussion, on that, where the traffic issues we have right now is everybody kind of coming in and either going to the middle school or going to intermediate school on that same road. Is there any discussions on ways to fix that, or is what it is, or? I mean, obviously, this is gonna definitely help what we have here, but we're also throwing in a heck of a lot more kids. So whatever it helps, I just feel there's gonna be more cars coming in, so. I just feel like with there's gotta be some better way to get kids in and out.
If you offset it though, you're probably actually creating more of an issue because then you have people trying to turn in while somebody is back further trying to turn the opposite direction.
Yeah, but Andy, don't you think this helps by getting the buses out of that side of the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll definitely help. But
Yeah,
I think a lot of the issue really in the morning isn't the buses. It's the drop off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a pretty good staging area with that circular drive, I think.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really nice job there. Not sure the dimensions of it or how many cars it can hold. Those are all cool things that we'd probably need to know, but I'm with you. We got to do something, but I think taking the buses out of there is a huge win.
Not to push back to your meeting with the city, but I mean, would you think that there could be even some decisions made with the city in the next couple of months? Because I mean, that's what we need for timing.
Yeah.
For our decision, yeah.
I would say I guess I don't want to speak for the city, but I would say we can get some commitments of some sort.
That either that's gonna work for Second Street or it's not.
Yep, I guess that's my opinion.
Okay, let's go on to middle school.
The city understands how important we feel that street is, and I respect that. The city also in our meeting, I would say, has some grave concerns about how the floodplain plays into that. And that was expressed. So I try to be optimistic, but I'm not sure I'm as optimistic just because that creates a lot more cost, I think, when we put in a road. So yeah. I do believe it's more conversation. I was thrilled that they were open to the conversation, and that's where I'd say we are.
I mean, so just jumping all the way out, if we're thinking of a bond in November and having plans and a committee together, whoever's doing that late summer, we need to make these decisions over the next few months. So I guess what I was asking, would we have either a yay, yes, this could go through, or a no, it's not feasible in the next 5 years or whatever? I mean, to me, because that's what we would need to make a decision on what's proposed here with where the office and transport hub is.
I think that as we look at the other positioning, that's something we can control. So when we think about our timeline, I think that might be something we want to take into consideration of what we can control. Now, I could be wrong, and I'll be happy to be wrong if the city comes back and says, hey, we're ready to do it. But I think there's a lot of planning and talking and it has to do to get that ready. So I think they're willing to have the conversation, so that I agree with Andrew on that. It's just it's a lot, I think, based on what I was told in that meeting or heard from the mayor.
One of us is an optimist. One of us is a pessimist.
I have a busing question. So I have kids at elementary and intermediate, right? And after school, my intermediate kids ride the bus to the elementary. So I just pick them up there. But in the mornings, I'm dropping kids off at both places. Is there an opportunity for kids to be dropped off at the elementary and bus to the, could they hop on a bus in the morning to the intermediate? And therefore eliminate the number of parents that are driving, you know, both places? You know what I'm saying?
And we do have students who do that.
Did you hear that, Melissa?
We do have that option, and we do have students who take advantage. I would just say when you were dropping off, I would drop off by 7:45, because I'd say most of the buses have already left the elementary by 7:50. But yeah, not every single bus that comes here, well, every bus could get you to the intermediate because they all end there. If you were trying to go to middle school or high school, depending on which direction the bus came from into Gilbert is kind of the buildings they hit first.
Okay. I feel like a lot of parents do that in the afternoons. Maybe that's not as like well known in the mornings, you know, but I'm just wondering if that was like a communicated and organized, if that would eliminate the parents that are driving through. I mean, I know it would for me personally. So I imagine I'm not alone in that I would
See
only
the same
drive.
10 people twice a day. pulling in
Right,
and out
right.
of
I mean,
both schools.
Yeah.
I do think the limitation is just supervision. If you drop your intermediate kiddos off here at the elementary at 7:30, and then there's really not anybody to supervise them prior to them getting on a bus. So I think just timing wise, because it is a pretty narrow window to be able to do that, but we do have kiddos who do that exact thing.
To do it more would probably take a focused, either staff or just, it'd be a big discussion, I think. Possible, but big.
Yeah, yes, and I do think it's something, all the components related to transportation, routes, number of buses, drivers, it's something that we will continue to look at, how that works in the morning, how that works in the afternoon. As we look at a new transportation director, we'll bring all of those pieces together to say, are we doing it in the very best way possible? I know that Bruce has worked really hard to have those pieces go together and flow nicely, so our kids are not on buses too long. So, but sometimes when you have new staff, it's an opportunity to take a look and say, is this the way we want it? And does this work for us? Or is there another way we can do that? So absolutely, Melissa, we can take a look at that.
I know too was discussed at one point to have like an exit on the west side of the parking lot there too, onto the road. I don't know if that, did I dream of that too?
No, we did talk
Okay.
about an entrance right just down the road there from the entrance,
On the
making
far
an
west.
exit, so you could pull in to the left.
Without hitting the bus lane.
Over here.
Right there. You could pull in, go all the way around. You could do the opposite of kind of pull in all the way around to that roundabout and then come back out. So there's only buses going one way in and one way out. And that might help on that side. So
Yeah, we would want to exit
Yep.
out the other way
Yep.
so that the door's on pickup
Absolutely.
side. Yep, so not running around.
mhm.
So just real quick on your estimates. The intermediate that doesn't include transport hub and district office is 13 million,
Yeah, we broke that out separate.
but there's 14 new classrooms but it's less expensive than the elementary because of
We're not renovating as much in the heart of it.
And gym space, cafeteria space, we're okay shape there if we were to add another grade level in. All right. Any other questions on intermediate? Moving along.
All right, so looking at the middle school. The northernmost piece is adding or moving over that track and practice field to be able to accommodate that at the middle school where more of the students are taking advantage of needing that track and that practice field. In looking at the building itself, we have some different components, and when we get to the kind of cost opinion page, we do have things broken out more a la carte for each of these items as they don't all package together. The first item on that list will be the administration area of being able to do a secure entry at the front of the building to be able to create that secure piece to come into the building and then be able to repurpose and rework some of the existing admin area as it is now for those student services. Being able to provide some of that officing space that's available in the center of the building. The second piece on the list, and I might have just flipped those. The second piece I think in my head is the band room. Being able to do a band room addition to handle the capacity and then being able to shift and have the existing band room be expanded for the choir and then be able to use that space for rehearsal area. The next piece is a gymnasium addition so that there would be 2 at this location. And with doing that piece, expanding the cafeteria commons area. Now, with that piece, if we are looking at taking 6th grade over to the intermediate school, as we look at capacity issues, that expanded cafeteria wouldn't maybe be as necessary, as well as that classroom addition shown on the south of the building. So when we put this plan together with the different scenario options, we were still looking at a 6-8 building and how that could accommodate that extra load. But by being able to shift that, we could also be able to leave this addition for future growth that could happen at this facility, but it wouldn't necessarily be imminent like the study was showing currently.
And we did look at having 2 different locations for that secured entry after the conversation. And ultimately, we felt that it is best positioned where it's shown here, just because of the proximity to some of the activities, the gymnasium, etc. But also because of the way that this building is designed with the pod setup. If we bring it in, we were talking about having it here, if you can see my cursor, kind of this 45-degree angle. It's basically going to divide a pod and then also need an entire admin set of offices that would need to go with it. So I think it was a more challenging strategy.
So how many classrooms are there? And Mike, when you talked time or two ago, you talked about having, when there's 3 grade, it was originally built for 4. So it's more of an even odd kind of, right? So how many are there? And if we did do the 2, so it's an even, how does that split out in the current building for classrooms?
We could do the 2.
2, if we had 2 grades, 7th and 8th. How would that split out and how many classrooms are there?
Yeah, so with just 2 grades, so I mean, there's what 20 right there. Now some of those 20 are for my exploratories, my specials, and so I would say I probably have 16 that would be available. So could have sections up to or 8 sections per grade.
But your curriculum isn't necessarily by that. I mean, you start doing some different classroom options, and so it's not necessarily the same as elementary and intermediate, correct?
Yes.
So when you say 8 sections, it would be accommodating as many as 200 students per grade.
Yeah.
But you'd also have some extra rooms. Because you said there's 20 total.
Well, there's 20, including what I would use for my exploratories, or what elementaries would call specials. So I have 16 really that I would use, unless I wanted to put my some of my exploratories on a card. So yeah, so 16 is what I would have for usable classrooms.
Some of those are science specific.
Yes, the 4 of those would be science specific.
And would that use the new, what I call the new, but on the far southeast where there's that double room? It would use that one.
I would be including that in the 16.
Yeah,
Yeah,
S2.
S2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think one thing to note, just as you guys are, deciding this, you're not just deciding the physical location of 6th grade. You're also deciding kind of the philosophy in which they're educated. So, right now we follow the middle school philosophy. If they moved over to the intermediate, they would be treated more as elementary students. Mrs. Griffin and I talked about that. I don't think either of us are crazy about that move. 6th grade relocating over to the intermediate. So I think it's just important to note that, it's not just the physical location. You guys would be deciding if you view 6th grade to be middle school kids, or if you view them to be elementary kids, and that would make a difference. Not necessarily in their education, but just kind of that guiding philosophy about, how they're treated, how they're organized, how they're scheduled. Yeah, there would be staffing issues with licensure. Some of my teachers are 512 in a particular area and couldn't be organized as teams. That aside is just really the philosophy that you guys and the board feel is appropriate for 6th grade, because it wouldn't be a change in how they're educated. Not educated, but just that guiding philosophy behind it. So that is something I think to know.
I don't think, Mike, hey, Jeff here, I don't think the option would have been given to us if it wasn't a plausible offering. Christine, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think, as we look at it, the one piece is, of course, when we're talking about the facilities. The second piece is talking about there's middle school philosophy, and it's about collaboration and how we work with kids and teams. There's more to it than that, but that's just, and Mike knows all this. So that's, I think, and maybe if you want to expand on that a little bit more about what that looks like. So when you bring 6th grade into, some buildings are K6, but our building would be 3rd through 6th grade. They would still have those pieces that you're talking about, like they would still have science, they would still have math based on their level where they are. As we previously discussed, I've talked to the board about what that looks like for certification for staff. We'd have to look at those and prepare for those pieces. And there are models of both around the country and around even here, where you have 6th grade in the intermediate level, and you have 6th grade at the middle school model. So what I know is that we have amazing teachers at the 6th grade level, and we have amazing leaders, and both groups will do an incredible job and continue to provide the best education for our kids in the setting that they're in. And I know that, there's also a parent philosophy kind of out there too, that says, let's keep them younger a little bit longer to keep them with elementary. There's also parents who say, like, I'm ready for them it's time to grow up and become independent, right? So there's all different sides to it. But I do have great faith that we have amazing leaders at all of our buildings. I know Mike will continue to lead his building and whatever that looks like. And I know that Amy would do the same. Whoever's in front of them, to continue to lead our teachers to do their very best. So it is something that, as the board has talked about, I do support, but it's not just magical overnight. We're going to have to just talk about what does that look like? How does that work? But we do that every day anyway, as it relates to what's best for our kids. So.
Working with science and technology, things like that they're starting to be introduced in 6th grade. Are there things that you can do in the current middle school building that can't be done in the intermediate building if we were to make that change, or would that affect it? We need to make there's, technology changes or things that would have to be changed. or-
Yeah, Josh, that's a good question. And I'll be honest, I don't know probably the specifics of the intermediate to be able to answer that intelligently. I don't think so, especially if there's some renovation at the intermediate. I would think that some spaces could be redesigned with that in mind. So I don't think it'd be that kind of issue. I just think it's a difference in, at the middle school level, kids have a little more independence, a little more autonomy.
Cultural.
We're departmentalized versus what an elementary would be. Kids are scheduled individually, they're less in a cohort, where they move as a kind of a herd all day long. And so I think it's just kind of a shift in how we view sixth grade. And I agree with what Dr. Trio said, is there are schools of thought both ways. I think, I think we have a track record of saying, sixth grade academically, socially, emotionally, behaviorally does well in our middle school. That probably looks different in different districts, but I think we have a track record of being successful. I just wanted the board to be aware you are making that decision too, in terms of what you think your philosophy is for sixth graders. It's not just their physical location. So
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up.
The other thing too, I just want everyone to know, Amy would be here, but she's actually teaching a parent meeting over at the intermediate. So that's why she's not here to voice her thoughts, but.
I think if you look at our conference schools, so we're the smallest middle school in the conference. 3 of them have 7-8 middle schools, 2 of them ADM and Bonner because they have a standalone 5-6. They're big enough to have a standalone 5-6. So the only one that has something like we're talking about would be Winterset. They have a 4-5-6 building, and then they have a 7-8 junior high. So that would be the closest. Otherwise, everyone else, even bigger, organizes 6-8 or middle schools. So just something.
I think one of the things we have to consider in this, and Mike, I sure appreciate your opinion and Christine's too, is that, when it comes to our responsibility as policy and money. And so from a money standpoint, this allows us to spend less money at your building and maybe use it somewhere else if so needed, or not spend as much and do it right for the taxpayers. That's why I like this model, is moving to 6th grade. But I wouldn't do it if it's not the right thing for the kids. So I can't make that decision as a board member, but I can talk about policy and spending, and that's what we're doing with this thing right now. And so, it wouldn't have been brought to us if it wasn't a pliable opportunity for us. So, Mike, I'm not here to say 6th grade should stay where it is. I'm not saying we should move it. I'm just talking about spending money.
Speaking of, can you talk to the track and field? I mean, I know it's been several years since we put in the competitive one at the high school, but it seems like that was about the same number. And I think we're talking about practice and a facility, but
Yeah.
3 million seems very high for that. But can you talk to that?
Yeah, so just long and short of it, there's the existing track over at the intermediate, and through all the conversations, it doesn't sound like it makes any sense to maintain or try to renovate. So that's why we proposed demoing it. And also the students that are using this, it sounds like they're heavily coming from the middle school, so it makes sense to be cited here. We're looking at this as an 8-lane track with a practice field. This is not intended for playing games on. And I think that the field that you have is a turf field. It's a little more expensive than doing natural. But prices are very inflated. The most recent field that we converted from a natural grass to turf was about 1.7 million, just to put it in perspective. So when we look at this, we're taking that into account and taking some of the other previous projects we've done, and that's where we came to about 3 million.
How much of that would be the track itself? And I know that you probably can't tease that out, versus how much land and grading and subsurface work is needed. I'm just trying to get my head around $3 million.
I don't know if I can. I don't
We
know if I
could-
can tell you that.
We could dig more and try to get that broken out if you want just track. Are you saying like if you were just? doing surface?
Yeah, it just seems like a high number.
Yeah.
For a practice facility.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is gonna come down to the subgrade that you're gonna have to do. A lot of the drainage tile, that's gonna be there regardless. So when you say just the track, I don't know that we can break it out that easy because the subgrade is gonna be it's all one deal.
We did expand some parking too and our
Yes,
access
yes.
point, so that is included under that cost. That helps offset that any.
Also, just a reminder that that field is utilized, at least where it is now, for a lot of our youth sports. So they will want to use it for that.
Okay.
Any other questions on the junior high, or sorry, middle school building? All right, high school.
All right. So I'm looking at the high school when we started talking through the options and opportunities at this building. One of the major pinch points was the science area, and not so much that there, as much room capacity issues, but the learning environment. So how those labs are exhausted and how those labs are set up with visibility concerns and lab layout concerns. Being able to look at doing a science lab addition, and that would be on that northwestern corner, is what we were considering, to be able to build those science labs as they should be, with right proportions and right equipment. We would look at doing a 2-story addition there to continue and tie on to the end of your building as it's set currently. To be able to have 2 labs with shared office and storage space, as well as that stacked above. So a 4 science lab addition with the support spaces, and in turn, being able to give you those spaces back in the center of the building where the science labs are currently, in order to repurpose those for classroom spaces. Because as those rooms are designed, they have 2 entry exit points in them, and being able to section those rooms down, we're able to create 2 general classroom spaces out of 1 lab, and then potentially be able to leave a larger multi-purpose space as this one's showing. But then on the second level, be able to have, again, 2 classrooms out of each lab. So a potential addition or a delta change of your 4 science classrooms, and then 6 general classrooms and a multi-purpose space to be able to use throughout the building. And then on the corner where those rooms come together, there are some office spaces and some prep spaces for those current science labs, to be able to look at repurposing those for some of those general breakout spaces that we might be missing, and to be able to have some of that collaboration space at the center of both of those academic hallway access points. That would be priority kind of number 1 on that list. We also, at the same time of talking about academics, we looked at the athletic facilities, and one of the big pinch points is locker room and training room access. So as we shift to the east on this plan, looking at how we can add additional locker room spaces, a training room space that's adjacent to the gym and the locker rooms currently, and then potentially look at the gymnasium addition at this location. As we've looked across the entire campus as a whole, gymnasium spaces are always in need. And in talking with planning and how activity and events are happening, being able to have 2 gyms at the high school space alleviate some of that overlap of multi-games going on, but yet in turn keeps all of training and EMS staff at 1 building, instead of having to transition between 2 spaces where you're going from the high school to the middle school. So that gymnasium, locker room, training room kind of piece became kind of priority number 2 and 3 respectively on that list. And then being able to potentially look at a weight room new facility in order to be able to take the existing weight room and have kind of that wellness multi-purpose space. And there's a lot of activities that overlap, and spaces for them to have practice and meeting spaces is lacking. So being able to kind of create that entire athletic wing that supports all of the sports as well as the wellness of students in any of those additional classes that can be used in those spaces. And then as we swing back, as the high school continues to see growth over 10+ years moving forward, the opportunity to also have more academic space in creating kind of that 2-story addition on the southern wing, to extend some of those general classrooms in the future as that would be able to come online. And at the time, we kind of prioritized all of these down the list, and that one became one of those future projections that it wouldn't be necessary now, but we wanted to just be prepared as Gilbert continues to grow.
And how many classrooms would that 2-story addition, that
That one
2
would
million,
give you 6 as well.
6?
But that's not in your projection in numbers. That's just.
It is, it's at the very bottom, I think.
Oh, classroom additions. All right, there it is. Yep. But if we had the science labs, that would create some other classrooms initially for space.
To be able to help with kind of that immediate impact
Yeah.
and give you those facilities that are in need rather than renovating those and still being short classroom spaces.
Courtney, is the science labs 2-story or just the one side?
Two,
Story.
Okay,
so 2 labs and then stacked so we can share some of those equipment systems, but be
Okay.
able to take advantage of land.
yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I was thinking. Thanks.
Kind of back to our projections, we're looking at about 100 kids in 5 years, roughly in the high school for the projections from RSP. So.
Yeah, I like the idea of the science labs and then repurposing where those are at. The additional 6 could maybe be a later phase. if
Yeah, down the
needed.
road.
The layout for the on the athletic wing to the east. um, Locker rooms, more locker rooms, a gymnasium. And I think that was probably part of the original site plan, I mean, that there. But building an additional weight room, it seems like that compromises that space in that land. I mean, is that just for purposes of where we're at right now? It's just like, well, that's kind of the size, but we're not exactly sure where it would fit kind of thing.
It seems to work in this spot, but we were just pointing that out. Our graphic looks like we've got some little site
I
concerns
won't
there.
be able to walk the dog around that.
I
side.
know.
It's cool, though.
We may need to configure kind of where that space is, based on square footage. That's about the
Yeah.
size of a block, but
Right.
looking at where it lines next to the track, we need to,
Yeah, I
finesse
mean,
that
it
a bit.
seems like it sticks right in there.
yes.
I mean, is there any potential? Probably wasn't designed that way, but for the current weight room to just expand out.
To the south,
Yeah,
I mean, we could look at it.
What we had talked about was being able to gain back that weight room though, as more of that wellness and for additional groups that need those spaces. So being able to get back a space virtually in that as well.
I'd just be curious if you could expand.
Yeah, that was part of it. I mean, cheer, dance. Yeah,
Even if it did an L, because the front side of those lockers,
locker
don't
rooms
need
over
any
there's nothing
frontage.
Right.
there except a door,
Mhm.
right? I don't know.
You know, I wonder if you could also just look at gaining those locker rooms and then part of the addition of the gymnasium, just make the addition of the locker rooms 2 or 3 times as large and just relocate the locker rooms. I think it can be played
Yeah.
around with. It's.
Yeah.
I think I mean, these are just blocks,
Right,
but I think what I take, you want it to look nice. I mean, you want it to flow in nice with the building. You want it to have a.
I mean, it is nice right now. You can walk around, right?
Yeah.
And rather than it being compromised right into the stadium.
we would still need to finesse.
Yeah.
Even if it does go on the end,
Yeah,
how that shape arranges itself.
Yeah.
You're also gaining gymnasium space, right? So you talk about that extra space that you want to gain back, but at the same time, you're adding an entire gym, which I
Right.
know will still be utilized, but when you think about additional groups, I
Mhm.
think about our cheer team coming over here to have, or the other building to have space to, the intermediate building. you know, maybe they wouldn't have to do as much of that through the gym space, so maybe, I mean, I'm just thinking if we had to compromise, maybe we just make a little bit bigger weight room, and maybe not that big of a weight room, and we still gain the gym and the locker room, and, you know. Just a thought.
I think we're all in agreement. These are options that we're all happy with, though. Is that not correct?
Just a matter of prioritizing, I think, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I think so, Tyler. At this point, I think the science labs and that part is a non-negotiable. I think we have to have them. I'm with you. I don't like the weight room way out there, but I'm not sure what that whole area looks like. Let these guys play with it and tell us where else they can put it. You know, I mean, there's a bunch of green space back there, but you know, we got to add, you know, where do we put, you know, if we tell us this, I guess, if we have to, in 10 years from now, add another wing of classrooms, where does that go? You know, I mean, we have some responsibility to the next people that take over for us.
So in the original plans, that would actually be a courtroom, right? So you'd still have, you could connect the north and the south.
In your original plans, yeah.
Or you could close that in.
You could enclose the exterior, what you're saying.
And we could,
So there would be classrooms running parallel to Gretton.
right, okay.
Whether that's feasible or not, but
The two classrooms, the two-story addition opposite of the science, that gives us, that would be really the next step, right? That gives us the classrooms of the science, plus we're adding back, that would be the next segment. Then probably you could then, if we decide to close it in or not close it in or whatever, you know. would
You
be
could
the
also then
next-
still go south of that two-story addition to
Correct.
kind of double back.
Correct.
Double loaded.
So
not keen on courtyards, it looks like.
We're not.
in my 20 years,
Courtyards.
I have filled in at least 8 courtyards for people because they don't like courtyards.
So it's hard to maintain. They don't get natural sunlight, so the grass dies, becomes a dirt pit. It doesn't get used the way that you think it does, and then we end up coming in and filling it with flowers.
You don't have Brett Randolph working on it.
I don't like her either.
I did get the mower back there.
It kind of just gives you that.
But I agree with Jeff. I mean, we need a long-term, don't close ourselves off then.
Right,
Right.
yes.
Right.
And we could
And
also have additional
I
solutions.
think that's what, right, I think Tyler, maybe you could work with them, since you're local there, and just play with that gymnasium weight room thing back there, and maybe just give them some different ideas back there, because I think all the pieces that are there. I just don't think the pieces fit. I'm not a big fan of the way it looks. I think we need them. I just don't know. Maybe it can look better a different way. I think all the parts, we have them all. I just think, I'm not sure that we have them right.
Agreed.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. Question, as we're talking about the weight room, gymnasium, wellness, multi-purpose, what is the reasoning for the cost of the new weight room? Multi-purpose being 2.7, it seems high unless there's weight equipment or something like that. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, outfitting that space, and we did it purely based on kind of doubling what you guys have currently.
Okay.
So it is twice the size of what you're at. So then being able to outfit that with additional, I wouldn't put probably a lot of weight in there, new
No
weight
pun intended.
equipment, but the mirrors that need to happen in spaces like that, the rubber floor matting, things like that. And then I know in that cost, we did also include some repurposing of that wellness center space, the existing weight room space, to be able to go kind of transition that away from weights more to a multi-purpose space.
Okay, perfect. I just want, obviously, we love that idea, you know, if we get all the things, I just wondered if it's more than we need, especially in the phase we're in. If we're simply looking for more space, because that's really where we're at, where everybody's crammed into our weight room, doing all of the things right now. Stretching, lifting, learning, training, they're all crammed into the weight room. We're simply looking for a space that have to cost 2.7 million
Right.
for that space.
And maybe if it is an extension, we could just look at that, of how much space is actually necessary, rather than just doubling it and starting over.
Yeah.
That would be more feasible.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe Cindy, to Christine's comment earlier, I mean, if we did put a gym in there,
Mhm.
my question would be, how critical is the wellness multi-purpose, because we don't have that right now.
Agree. We might be able to, and I agree, Tyler, we might for this phase, versus what we are hoping to talk about in a dozen years or whatnot. Maybe this phase, the space of a gym might do it in order to make sure that we take care of the other things we need to. And I promise I have talked to Ian Smith about this. I'm not just coming in and saying.
No. And we can dig more into that based on where the selection kind of prioritization happens. Yeah.
And then the other
Right.
question-
I think too, Cindy, that one of the things that when I met with these guys is that we talked about the cheerleaders a lot, that, they're in every sport, but listen to my English, I could take an English class. They do not have any dedicated space. So I don't think it's fair to the cheerleaders that they have multi-players in each sport all year long and they have no ability to practice in an enclosed area or something they call their own.
Great, I love the idea of getting them some space. I mean, I love watching them in our library after school every day and practicing, but I love the safety element of having them have a good space. And then the other question I had, just in planning purposes, when we look at adding on in the science labs and the possibility of further down the road, the additional classrooms, do we need to be thinking about some restrooms upstairs, downstairs, both? Because we have the restrooms right as you enter the academic wing, but then if we're talking about extending those wings, are we needing to think about restrooms, which is quite a cost?
Right. I would think with that 2-story addition, when you bring 6 more online, that would want to be a portion of that.
The science wing.
Yeah, because technically where your science wing extends, the kind of hot spot of all of those classrooms you're gaining is right adjacent to your restrooms.
If that one is adjacent to a single stall, one up and one down, so the science.
At the science addition, but at your 6 new classrooms, you're going to be centralized right across from them on both stories.
Right.
So I would say on the 2-story future classroom.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And that's another spot that could be an addition to double load that corridor technically.
Right.
If when you guys were considering that could be something to think about too, is how that connection can happen for future or what makes the most sense at that time.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on the high school?
Nice job, though.
Last slide, I think you have there is just the kind of summary of the cost, which we've kind of hit on already. I will point out, this is Jeff's favorite part, is the transportation / admin office. I think you kind of threw there on the south side of the high school.
Yep.
On the land.
Yes. Do you want me to go back to that one? And when it zoomed in, I mean, it's blocks right now, but
it's fine.
So yeah,
It's
what we
more
had
of an
looked at
option.
down there was removing everything, pulling it all to the south side, being able to have that same thought process though, that everything is in one spot. District office, central receiving, transportation, we'd be able to kind of balance what part of that building gets finished. So heating, cooling, built out, whereas keeping them separated would create 3 separate systems that we would need. But if there was a way to bring that all under one roof to get some of the adjacencies and cost savings in that. Now, we do have a large range on this though, because there's still a lot of unknowns. How much of your fleet do you want to house? Do you need it all conditioned space? Is some going to be parked on flat lot surface and some housed inside? As part of this range, we also kind of looked at, do we bring all of your fleet here, which would make it the most sense to have all of your district fleet vehicles, as well as all of your maintenance and snow removal, yard equipment, everything kind of all in one location, central, and how much of that gets housed in conditioned environment versus unconditioned.
And I think as a board, that's something we just have to figure out and discuss. I don't know if we're gonna do it tonight or not.
Yeah.
But we just got to figure out, 1, is it a priority? 2, it is a priority, where we're gonna put it.
Yep.
So, but I do like the options laid out there. We can kind of figure that out. It's a lot.
It's good.
Very good. So I guess, next steps, walk me through 30, 60, 90 days. What's on tap? What do
So
we need to do?
when we start looking, and I'm gonna switch this up, like, this is not in your packet. I just wanted to have it in case the question came up. We start backing into a date. Now, I know you guys said November, so that might change what we put together here, because in our heads, we always take the most aggressive, so September. Although most aggressive would have been March, so I'm really glad you didn't say March when you were talking. But looking at how that all lays out, because we want to make sure that we're recognizing when things are due. In looking at that July, August, September timeframe, if we're looking at September, that's when the majority of our promotion and pieces are needing to put in place. As we back into that, then June is really that cutoff date. If you are running a September bond, we would need to be able to have that ballot language for the petition, signatures happening in that month to be able to submit it to the auditor to be able to call for that election for you guys to go through the proper stages. So right now we have this wiggle room. We have March, April, May to be able to work with, prioritize, kind of vet this plan through depending on what kind of input we're looking for as far as faculty, community input, and being able to create that best plan moving forward. That gives us the window of time that we're going to look at for the next 3 months. And then beyond that, that is when we're going to hit the ground running then based on that time frame. Now, again, if you extend that out to the November timeframe, you know where that calendar shifts. So it does give us a window of time of what we're working within, that when somebody says, how soon do I have to make a decision? The closer to May we get, the twitchier we get.
Do we want to talk about, I thought we had, but maybe we should put that back on the table. I mean, we talk in September or November.
I guess let's throw it on the table. I mean, I guess we'll start, Josh. You want September or November in regards to a possible bond date?
What has better turnout?
November. Because it's going to be
A
election.
general election.
What
So
has
one-
happier turnout?
November, the more, the fewer you tend to get the ones that may not be as interested.
Yeah.
Is what we've been told in the past. So.
It would make sense to me to go for the best chance of success. I don't know that 2 months would make a tremendous difference on the overall construction of a, multi-million dollars. But then maybe it will.
September gives you a little bit more window to have time to be able to bid earlier in that first spring. November, you're already kind of through the time it would take to get drawings assembled for early release to have that first summer kind of active. Just to shift it a little bit, seeing where you guys are at and the like major phased pieces too, it probably wouldn't be huge. I mean, you're not looking at that first summer of getting probably a lot of things done that are renovation work that you would need to hit that window. So you've got a little bit more option.
We lit the fuse a little early last time. With the assumption that we'll pass a bond, we started doing some of that work. So you can do that too.
And Tyler, have we gone out for a bond at the same time as the general election in the past? That you recall, or maybe Gail?
Well, I was with the last one, it was a special.
Yeah.
Special.
It was in April.
Yeah.
No, I can't talk. In April.
Yeah. I mean, in reality, you have to have, I think, 60%.
You do,
And I think we've been 80 to 85. Yeah. For all of them that I've been involved in. But it's still a matter of planning, to your point, and what does that mean for then the subsequent execution? Right?
Tyler, I think November would be better. I think the market's going to keep cooling off. And what worries me is if we go out to bid off of these plans and to get the contractors to hold their price. Right now, I don't think we'll get contractors to hold their price for very long. Do you think, Courtney?
They're legally bound to hold them for at least that first 30 days before they put their contract in place. So if they submit a bid, they do have to stand by that price. We have been seeing a little bit better on pricing. We've seen a little bit worse on probably the amount of bidders with labor shortages.
Yeah.
So pricing has equalized, labor has continued to stay high or non-existent with certain trades.
When was the last, to your knowledge, when was the last bid that went out for a school? Do you know, on your guys's?
We just had one go out 3 months ago. And it was, however, ran CM at risk. And so they were able to solidify a lot of individual bids since they went that direction and not just a general contractor, the traditional method.
How many did you have? Did you have lots of people bid on it?
There were a good amount of bid packages. Plumbing was one that was probably the least. I think we had only one bidder on plumbing. And painters have been kind of in demand.
Okay.
But otherwise, we've had at least 3 in each category and then upwards on others.
Melissa, what's your thoughts on timing?
I mean, I think they both probably have their positives and their negatives. But if we get a better turnout in November, that makes the most sense to me.
Do you have anything that would be polarizing in November that would cause?
We'll have a school board election in November as
We have
well.
4 new board members possibly. So that would be, I don't know if that's
They'll be paying
polarizing.
attention.
Yeah. Which I think is good. I mean, to have people that care about the school, going to vote for the school board, they're going to vote for the bond. It's kind of what you want.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, I mean, let's target November. I mean, we got a lot, there's a lot still. I mean, in my mind, prioritize phases. What, we got some work to do ahead of us still. And I don't want to feel like we're going to rush this. I don't think we would in September, but I just feel like we got to get this right. And I also agree with Jeff that I think it's going to get better. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I'm the optimist. So.
I think it's gonna get better too.
Hey! All right, thank you. Anything else? Wrap it up. Great job. Thank you
Yeah, good
so
job.
much.
So
Thank
much.
you for coming. So-
Move the bus barn. Quit putting it on the school grounds.
You're cutting out, Jeff. Can't hear you.
Just all that.
All right, moving along here. New business, consider approval request from Carolyn Miller for agricultural instructor for the Gilbert High School biannual Costa Rica trip, March 8th through the 15th in 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consider approval of the 23-24 district school calendar.
Just one comment before we vote, so. I know I'm the squeaky wheel on this one, I acknowledge that. For me, as a parent, both working parents, this met the threshold of a significant change. So it was right there, but I know a lot of the, we got some feedback that I just would really like to see in the future that something, again, my personal opinion, that met that threshold for us, for our family, for the impact and some of the changes in the thing that we have to make now. I am very happy about being able to support the staff and to give more time for some of that. I think it will be beneficial, but just something to think about next year. I know it gets tough. I know the struggle. You open it up to everybody and then you get a million opinions and they're all different. And it does make fully acknowledge that. But this is one to me, it just, it would have been nice to have a little bit of, more input other than a public, forum the night before or the night of the vote. So just something to think about. I'm not going to say, what that definitively means, but I know that this is a viewpoint from, a certain type of family that we have in the district that is you know, I can represent that side, so. Other than that. Again, I know the opportunity to give more time to the staff to. You know, it's hard to teach. A lot of people think that it's, you know, it's an easy job, you know, why do you need more time outside of teaching? Well, we get a lot of emails from our teachers at, you know, 10:30, you know, to midnight. And so I recognize that, I just want you to hear the other side of that from our perspective, so.
Anything else on that? Do we have a motion to approve?
Make motion.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next one, consider approval on the addition of a middle school, high school curriculum coordinator, full-time position. Again, you will see that job description within your board notes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
We have a second?
Support it, but I'm just seeing if the video guys are not here.
I second.
Hey, there we go. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Last item on new business is consider approval for 3 new positions for the 23-24 school year. We've got a middle school language arts teacher, a middle school math teacher, also to teach high school, and a elementary intermediate PE teacher.
Can I speak to this just for a second?
Of course.
So this is based on as kids are moving forward, our numbers, and what that looks like for middle school. In math, it's the same, but Cindy and Mike will be working together to figure out if that's a middle school position or high school position so that it gives more math time at both buildings. So that's that's what I heard from them, that was a need. And then the additional PE position is really to help with the wellness, not only in PE, but to add to what they're doing relates to help with the counselors, to pull the counselors out, to give them extra time with groups of kids so that PE teachers will be teaching PE as they always have, but also they'll be available for wellness activities beyond PE. So it allows for all of those pieces. So that's why they're all there.
Great.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Financial report summary, Gail.
So I just briefly to touch on the main the report of revenues and expenditures to date. The revenues are a little bit lagging. That's just a timing issue of if you just look at the summary here. The difference in the monthly revenues and the year-to-date revenues, that is just basically gathering of the revenues coming in, and of those sources, it is basically the shortfall is no concerns. It's just the lagging part of it, but mainly property taxes and state aid. The state aid will level out as we finish the year. Property taxes, those come in when they come in. And then the tuition and other local sources and federal sources, those basically are, we have to submit claims and they reimburse us. So those will be coming in, finishing up this month, and then just minimal the following month of March. The majority of everything will come in the month of February. The expenditures, we are tracking under budget. So that is good. And so overall, we have a year-to-date gain. So that is Should have brought my mouse. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is in my department update, we were tracking higher than what we are budgeted for in the deposit of the interest is doing really well. And so I continually have been talking to our banking and then taking advantage of some other, we're getting a really good rate when you invest over $1 million. So worked with Avela, met with them. They are going to restructure some things to give us some benefit and reevaluate that. And then I am also using ISJIT as the other and really trying to get and maximizing our funds that we have on hand in the save. And so that's doing really well. And as you can see from January and December, we're increasing, almost 23, 0.25%. So, and that continually increases. So that is good. Overall, for the capital activity fund, no concerns with that. We have Pebble, we had very limited this month. I think we're catching up and they're going to be working on sealing bids for summer projects. Is that true, Brent? We're getting close to summer projects.
It's a struggle with concrete right now.
Okay. And the nutrition fund is doing extremely well. So we'll continue. I had talked to Deb. I know she needs to replace some equipment. So we talked about that. The best thing to do, the best practice and what the state likes to see is only 3 months of salaries as a balance. And then after that, they want you to use those funds. So she has some needs for some equipment. So I asked her to get some bids together so we can look at that and to use some of her balance on that. So with that, I would really like to go to the budget piece. This is the first view. I've been working on the district-wide budget. So the SSA rate has been set at 3%, signed, and it is the state law. So if we do a comparison, and as this draft is a 3%, cash reserve drops, and that's only because of the calculation of our authority has dropped, and that's we can only this is the maximum 116,000. And then instructional support goes up a little bit because we have an increase in students. But this draft includes the management to remain the same as last year. Pebbles, the straight 33 and $34. And debt service, we're going to maintain that at 405. This will allow us to prepay some levy. I think the last that I looked, it's over $1 million worth of prepayment. So that will help us gain some our debt ceiling will be able to, or capacity will help us with our project. So with that goal in mind, and so this is basically the overall levy will go down. But I say that I highlighted this I included this correspondence from Piper Sandler, I guess they are now. I don't know if you heard, but they did the calculation wrong and submitted it. They were too aggressive and they used for the rollback of 56.4%, and it should have been 54.6. And so what that actually will mean is once they get the law changed and they go back to the county auditors, have to readdress and recalculate all the valuations for city, state, so that our nice growth will go down, which means taxes will go up slightly is what they're telling us. So I believe even with if our valuations go down, which means our tax levy will go up, and I still believe we're going to be about that 16.7 or 16.8. They're supposed to get that finished within a week or two is what they're telling us to get this redone. But they're going to send it back to the county auditors, and the county auditors have, I think, 15 days to get everything calculated. So it'll be a tight timeline. But this is pretty much what we've had in past years. And. Tyler, you.
I just, whether now would be a time just to throw out the idea of at some point preparing to do a Pearl. And so that is a public and education and recreation levy. That would be as much as 0.135. So it, on the grand scheme of things, let's say it was at 1671, that would take us to 1684, right?
Right.
But that allows for playgrounds, community education, school, city partnerships, recreational places, tennis courts. And so with, depending on where the levy falls out, I mean, the levy is continuing to go down, which is good. And I'm wondering if that would be an opportunity for us to help out with the city if we went for a Pearl at some point.
Christine and I have talked about that. I said this will be opportunity. And what I see that is the communication of, the message. What are we going to use it for? I think people would totally support that if they knew what the plan was and what it would you. Well, November, I don't know, but you take it to the vote of the people, and once they approve it, it never sunsets. It's in that. So that's the sweet thing about that, and so it's in some kind of conjunction or joint effort with the city or some community. And whether you have some kind of agreement, I don't know what that would look like, but it would help the district offset some of those expenses that may be incurred during that partnership. So yeah, we could look at, and it just takes the vote of the board to bring it to the election. So what the timing of that looks like, I don't know. So we definitely, but yeah, Tyler, our future, and this budget totally matches our long range, our model. And so our levy will go down, it trends down. And then once the cash reserve levy is available to come back on, then it'll be more stable and go up a little bit, but it will be around that $17 mark, right under that.
I think, Charlie, it's a conversation we film another city meeting and discuss with them, future projects, things that we can put them on for the community.
Looks like it would probably bring in around not quite $100,000 a year. Basically on the regular.
Flat.
Yeah.
And again, must be used for playgrounds,
Tennis
type,
courts.
yes, community.
Joint.
Yep.
intervention.
Do they have to be capital items or?
Yeah.
Yeah, operational. As long as you can link it to a community, it's pretty. Yeah. So this is the first
Good
draft,
suggestion.
so I'm hoping that they can get everything settled at the legislation where we could come back and have a final look in March would be great. If they can't, I don't know if they'll be able to, but how the process works is we would have a final hearing on the April 10th board meeting. A public hearing, and then we vote on it, and then it has to be filed with the county auditor by April 15th. We'll bring back another draft and hopefully it's pretty close to the final at the March meeting.
Good news, Gail.
So just a perspective, is the old guy still here, is we were running right under 20 for a number of years.
We were one of the highest rates, I think.
We were. Now, so 17 is quite a reduction over the last 8-10 years. That in the face of all the building we've done. So, I mean, it's a reflection of the changes of the district, but the levy is continuing to go down.
And I really have to say the management of what the position that the board has taken on maximizing that debt service has really put the board in a position to for the future of future projects.
Any other questions for Gail? Gail, great job. Thank you very, very much. Moving ahead, consent agenda. Anything need to be pulled, discussed? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Yes. Second, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Next meeting will be March 6th. Make note of that because our normal meeting time is during spring break. There was maybe some discussions on moving that to March 20th, but with everybody being gone the week before, it's probably best to leave that at the March 6th meeting unless everybody here feels that date will not work. But again, March 6th, Monday night is the regular board meeting. And then we've got,
March 6th or March 27th, so.
yeah, so we might as well just keep it the 6th, I think. Other than that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thanks for being here. everybody.
Thank you, everybody.